Cooper, who is a representative of the CABE, and the CABE forms part of the Central American Integration System, and it is the bank for development for Central America. Please, Randall, I give you the floor. Hello, good afternoon, Roxana. Thank you so much, and thank you for your welcome words. And thank you for inviting Central American Bank for Economic Integration that to form part of this forum, and also special greeting to Daniel, Sebastian, and Ignacio, who are going to share their expertise in this panel. In my criteria, this is one of the most important panels of this forum because it's going to address the importance of financial mechanisms for the region to adjust to the demands of the market through economies and forms of payment and changes in preference of the customers, among other factors that have done that the SMEs can evolve. These changes have been more evident, obviously, now with the COVID-19 pandemic, showing the importance of using technology, information technology, and to see new products and services for the SMEs. And therefore, we have to make changes to the financial products that are being offered to the SMEs. I wanted to share with you quickly, as a sample of what I already mentioned, the Economic and Social Research Institute from Honduras made a study about the SMEs and how they were affected by COVID-19, where they gave results that small enterprises had to suspend 13% of their employees, 33% of the temporary employees, and 20% of per hour employees, and 30% of the SMEs had to suspend 15% temporary and 17% of the workers per hour. The study reflected that 91% of the companies addressed during the research had to stop the production, distribution, and offer of products because of the health crisis that happened, and more than 29% said they couldn't survive the crisis for more than 1 month, while 42% could survive between 1 and 3 months, and less than 11% of the companies were going to be able to survive from 3 to 6 months. So the 245 SMEs that took part in the study, 52% indicated the need to implement important changes in the business model in the current environment and future environment. The main business strategies mentioned it highlighted commercialized products online and home delivery. 25% of the businesses implement biosecurity, 35% adapt or offer new products and services, 10%, and strengthen the skills of their personnel, was a response of 4.5%. The before is a reflection of the reality that the SMEs face, in this case Honduras, but this could be adjusted to the reality of the SMEs from the whole Central American region. It is very important to see the programs to counteract the crisis of the region due to COVID and the changes in the paradigm and changes in the business model as a result from COVID. But it had already been occurring because of the change on new or introduction of new technologies. Many companies are incorporating digital platforms through biosecurity. In 2019, only 16% of the SMEs used information technologies communication as part of the business model. Undoubtedly, it's expected, and I'm sure that this figure is increasing considerably due to the pandemic, and we have to continue to promote programs with credits and working capital for increasing the business of the SMEs and giving financial assistance, because trade and the value chain of the SMEs in the region, as well as working on the approval and authorization of laws with regulatory frameworks. The Central American Bank for Economic Integration, its role of development bank for the SICA countries, launched the facility of emergency for financial area for the SMEs affected by COVID-19, where we put at the disposal of the financial institution with which we work fresh resources so that they can offer financing to the SMEs that were affected by COVID-19, where, as part of the destinations that we could grant, we included the changes in business model and innovations that were given and are occurring in the SMEs from COVID-19. We have been more than $350 million in the region to channel resources to the SMEs, achieving at the end of June to protect more than 35,000 jobs around the region. In this sense, CABE reaffirms once again its commitment to attend the demands of the market of the SMEs to be along the lines of Sempromipe. As Roxana said, CABE is part of the board of directors of Sempromipe, and obviously we work hand in hand with the board of directors and the ministries in assistance to SMEs so that they can adjust to the demands of the sector. To close, and without further ado, I wish this forum great value for all to promote economic development and financial inclusion in the seeker countries. Thank you. Thank you, Randall, for your words, and definitely this panel. We have many expectations about it because we're going to speak about topics which you have been talking about of how we can finance SME in each one of the live phases of the SME development and how the financing ecosystem can adapt to those demands of the SME. Thank you so much, Randall, and thank you for your participation to be able to open this panel. And on behalf of the Executive Director of Sempromipe, thank you so much. And also to Dr. Dante, so that you were able to come today. And now, to continue with regards to this panel, I'm going to welcome Daniel Bushbinder, who is founder of Alterna. Daniel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support and the region in Sempromipe. And I want to say that Alterna is a social innovation platform that works to generate those changes in Central America and the Caribbean. Daniel has led different initiatives, particularly those that have to do with social entrepreneurship and attending the rural population based on this. And he also cultivated the first inclusive generation of more than 2,000 entrepreneurs in SMEs with a high impact in the Sika region. He also dedicated the first years of his career to the consumption market as marketing executive at L'Oreal. He's also been consultant for this public and private sector in areas such as tourism, mining, and consumption market, both in Mexico, Guatemala, Spain, Germany, and United Kingdom. So I shall leave the floor with Daniel Buchbinder. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to everybody who is joining this transmission. We thank you for your effort, and we know it's going to be very beneficial. And I greet Isabel, Sebastian, and Ignacio for also participating in this forum. Thank you so much. Thank you, Daniel. Floor is yours. Thank you very much, Roxana. Thank you, Randall, for your words. For me, it's a pleasure to moderate this panel. And thank the team from Sempromipe for offering this forum with these relevant topics and so important. And something which is also important is it's evident and frank attention to dynamic recovery. And I love to see that part of the name of the forum is financial analysis in a region where there are also inequality components that are so high, and a recognition to Sempromipe and Sika is so important because to see how we can face the challenges that we have before us in an inclusive way. And I'm very excited also to be here on this panel. High luxury and good afternoon, Central America, and a little bit more advanced to the Southern Cone. We have panel members who are so highly skilled that I'm going to introduce very soon. And Roxana already shared a bit about the name of this panel. And in reality, what we're going to expose right now are three instruments and innovative approaches that are generating very interesting outcomes in South America and all and other parts of the world also. And this is a space where we will be able to learn from experts and other people such as angel investors, impact investment, and topics of technology and everything that has to do with the value change on technology through to looking at financing. We're also going to have very complementary approaches. And so we're very excited to be moderating this panel. Without further ado, I will advance by presenting this wonderful panel. And I start with Isabel Chakirian. She's President ex Gala, is a South American Association of Angel Investors, Executive Director of AXA, and leader based on the industry. She has a doctor in business administration from Grenoble École Management from France and a business school in the University of Montevideo. She's public accountant for the Republic, and she worked on entrepreneurship in the United States and Global Business Angel Network for Uruguay and World Business Angel Forum. And besides, Isabel was awarded as the Entrepreneur of the Year in 2009, 2010, and 2016. She received the recognition of emerging, and she is the 22nd place of the leaders in Uruguay, according to the ranking. And welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Sebastián Hueliseiko is an Argentinian economist for the University of Buenos Aires, has a master's in science and development and economics, University of Sussex, is specialized in development and impact with a broad global experience. Currently, she is performing as head of public policies of Global for Impact Investing, and before that was secretary of Social Global Information of Argentina, head economist of Portland Trust in the United Kingdom, and of executive director of GIG in London. It's also such a pleasure to have you aboard, Sebastián. And finally, we have also the participation of Ignacio Carballo. Ignacio is specialist in financial inclusion and technology for development, a master of the cum laude from Madrid, and a master of microfinances and financial inclusion, certified expert in financial inclusion policies and analyst in microfinance. She is a professor in Argentina from the University of Buenos Aires and has worked as a researcher of applied science and business in the Catholic University of Argentina. And I've also collaborating with development and in projects of international consultancy. Ignacio is also director of the ecosystem program of NUCA, affiliated to the Southern Cone of the digital payments in America. As you can see, the panel we have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and basically I would like to start with a question so that Isabel can tell us what is her approach of angel investment. And the question, Isabel, is how can we adjust the financial approach that fulfills the needs of the investors, and how angel investment can improve the financing and direct for the SMEs. The floor is yours. Thank you so much, Daniel, and thanks to Sempromipo for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I prepared a presentation to share and to accompany the response to the question that you just made, and that I imagine that you're already seeing it on the screen. I stayed with the introduction to the panel a little while ago how the entrepreneurships are being financed throughout this growth cycle. The companies and the entrepreneurships that have financing, in the best of cases, they have a growth like the black curve that appears there, and they have a growth at the beginning at up until they reach maturity, but it's a growth of invoicing or the volume that they sell, the cash flow, which is the curve that appears in orange, and the evolution at the beginning as like the babies, they eat a lot, they demand a lot and generate little, and then little by little this curve starts growing. So this is a passage between invoicing and the cash flow, where the growth of the operations of entrepreneurship of the businesses and the financing needs is during the first phase. It generates what we know about the valley of death. This first instance where you have that gray arrow, or many entrepreneurship or many SMEs fail during their first phases because they need financing and need accompaniment and financial support that exceeds the capacity that the entrepreneurs have of self-financing. These are the first phases of how the funds of the triple X or the family, friends and founders, the family and friends, that where the banks still do not lend them money because they do not have sufficient knowledge of the banks, or they have risk capital and they don't see that the entrepreneurship is so incipient at the beginning. This phase where they have financing needs, and then they have this non-traditional instrument, which are the business angels. These are angel investors during this phase where they play a fundamental role. And who are these business angels? I'm going to give like you two examples in the story in history, since it's a non-traditional financing instrument, and their role is in the story. So the first angel investors, I would say, were the Catholic kings when Christopher Columbus placed the idea that he needed presented the idea that he needed to finance a crazy idea that he had to go around the world and reach the Indian countries. And he was presenting three boats to be able to make this tour. And so the Catholic kings believed in Christopher Columbus. They gave him funds and he reached the Americas. And this is how the Spanish colonies were established in South America. And those who like films, I don't know if you remember Shakespeare in Love, where Shakespeare would propose to these other two people. First of all, the ones in the middle, I don't remember the names in the film, who were the owners, the two owners of the theater. Shakespeare would request financing to be able to present his works, his theater work, and he needed financing to be able to present it, and then they would be able to be paid through the sale of the tickets of that work. Also, in the history and the times of Shakespeare, those people who financed the idea of creative people or people who had dreams or had projects. So the figure that we now know as angel investor has always been through back has always been behind dreamers to bring forward their ideas. So what happens at this time of business angels or angel investor of non-traditional financing, where they say how many are they, how difficult it is to get to them. If we want to see it in an image or in a number, in 2020, only in 2020, Latin America and the Caribbean, they mobilized at least part of that form part of Scala. They moved more than $16 billion in 164 entrepreneurship. In the Sika region is nearly $4 billion that were invested in 15 different operations, and the angel investment and the investors who work through networks, they closed this amount of transaction. The most important part of this is that Sebastian is going to speak a bit more about this in Latin America. These operations, 30% were of social impact, and the SICA region, that number increased to 47% in entrepreneurships or investments of social impact. Se congelaron.
So there is investment, and this is something that we have witnessed for the last years. So what's going on in the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean? This was because 2020 and the pandemic, and in the SICA region, it went higher. And this is the curve that we are currently showing. And this is from last year, from 2020, 2021. We have liaisons at Crown Ventures. This is the last year, and we have 3 more investors this year. So this has dynamized the region. So it's here, and the investment is here to stay. I believe that this is something that I would like to leave on the table. What do we know about entrepreneurship that receive this investment? What's the profile that they're looking for? The ones who decide where to put the money, how to support the entrepreneurs, that want to carry on with these ideas. The reality is that from 100% of the entrepreneurs that you present on a network, we can see the evolution throughout the years. In this slide, 25% will pass the first filter. 25% is, let's say, presented to the investors and they decide to invest, and the 5%, it's the final investment. So this is something that is very hard, but it's something that we need to wrap our head up around. And some entrepreneurs have a social impact. We can see what's going on in Latin America and the SICA region, and we can see that there's a special interest around the SICA region for the entrepreneurs that are trying to have a higher impact on the quality of life of the citizens. We have other investments on education, and this is something that it's happening around Latin America as well. So the type of entrepreneurs that are receiving the angel investment, we can say that both in Latin America and the SICA region, there's a particular interest on new technologies. And there's a higher interest on high technology, high tech. Different from the rest of Latin America. We can see the industries. The SICA region has a higher range than Latin America. We can see that there's a very strong interest on fintech, very strong interest compared to Latin America, I mean. But I believe that technology is the focus of all of our countries. Something that is very interesting to see what's going on in the SICA region currently is that if we see the payments on the region, from the investments on the SICA region, the Angel Network, only 20% of the entrepreneurs are from the SICA region. So from these, it's only a representation of 18% of the final representation of the SICA region. This means that we receive in the SICA region a higher demand of capital. So to wrap up and to talk about certain characteristics that are important about these angel investors is that they are active entrepreneurs, businessmen that are active, different than the case in Europe and the case in USA. They are more from the corporate world. So it's a need to train these investors to understand what's the process of entrepreneurs and what's the process or the characteristics of the process of entrepreneurs. And this is why Sempromipe and Scala, we have developed this training instances that we will be launching the next or the coming weeks to provide more tools for the investors if they are interested on invest, so they can have the tools to know how to do it better. And there's non-traditional financing tool of the SMEs. So this is basically just to have a quick idea of what's going on the angel investment around Latin America and particularly on the SICA region. This is research that we're doing with Sempromipe in collaboration with Scala. So these are the highlights, and this is what I would like to lay on the table currently. Thank you, Isabel. This is very relevant, very current about the state of the angel investment on the region. You highlighted very important bullets that are interesting for the region, and specifically regarding how the region has a higher demand. So how these mechanisms of angel investment, impact investment can sort of unblock the capital at a local level. It's very interesting, and I think there's no better way to connect the data for the intervention of Sebastián. Sebastián, you are representing an initiative, a worldwide initiative focused on investment or impact investment. And I believe that it will be very interesting to know what's your point of view. Is it possible to conciliate between the economical impact and the horizon that you have worldwide, the big picture? Good afternoon. Thank you for having me in the forum, Isabel, Ignacio, and the organizers. I think that Isabel's presentation was spectacular. And you're asking me a question about economic history of the humanity. And this question that you ask, I mean, the answer, at least for us, it's very evident. It's complex, but it's fundamental. It has to do with nature of capitalism in 21st century. This is basically it. You asked, necessary to sacrifice the economical growth, it's not only necessary, but we need to overcome that dynamic because of the economic order, the way on how the capital was reproduced for the last centuries evidently was successful. 100 million of people overcome poverty. This is something that we cannot deny, right? But we have had to pay very high for this. Lack of equality, social equality, are very like what we have in early 19th century, and we are about to collapse. And this is a manifestation of this execution of the businesses that, again, it was successful, but we're paying a high price for this. Again, lack of equality nowadays and the history of capitalism. After World War II, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and all of the distribution dynamic, progressive dynamic was Russian, and we are worse than ever, I believe. So these two things make us think that the global economy is not sustainable. Sustainable meaning that the earth somehow is compromised. To continue with this project, Earth, it's compromised. And an economical system that will only give privilege to growth without taking care of the environment and the humanity with a single driver. So it's not only possible to conciliate between the social impact and the economical impact, but it's fundamental. This is the most important thing that we must do in the economical political for any company, any country, any type of economy. This is what we need to do. And this is my last philosophic insight, but it's as simple as saying that if you think that right now we are on a historic break, we're changing, we're seeing changes. And some of the rules that are basic are currently changing about economy and society and the productive systems. In the 19th century, investment and capital, the money was flowing from a community to another one. And this was only based on expectations of the financial recovery or financial return. It was not a 30%, let's say, but it was a 15% of the return. There was no risk of investment. This only happened after these mechanisms, these standards. It happened around the 30s and the 40s. And nowadays, any businessman, businesswoman will not evaluate these business models and the financial risk. So capitalism of 20th century have a balance between the risk and the return. This is the way to do business. This is the opportunity of making an investment, but if you don't feel comfortable with the risk, you will not invest. In 21st century capitalism, we believe that we need to move forward on not only look for the opportunities that will give you a higher return at a financial level, but to have the same equation. Risk and social impact and return are important. This is fundamental, and this is a fintech change on how we do business. These two dimensions are equal. So this discussion, if you need to sacrifice the return, it was about fate 20 years ago. Some will believe yes, some will believe no, but we didn't have much evidence. Now, with the evidence, we can see that we don't have to do the sacrifice. There are many evaluations for the decision-taking criteria that are giving higher return to the traditional funds. They are only maximizing the economical funds. There are isolated cases of risk management, project fund management, and they, because of the portfolio, because of the research, and because of deciding on these opportunities of a high economical return and high environmental return, they're moving forward. Now, this evidence is growing, but what it's currently happening in the communities that want to measure these results on social impact, it's still, even when we have a global market of $1 trillion, millions of dollars, it's still the 1% of the actives that is being managed in the world. So there's a challenge nowadays to make these investments more mainstream, to consolidate the change on the genetics that we believe that is going to change the paradigm. We will have more sustainability, more equality, and this conciliation, it's possible. Concrete challenges that has to do with more transparency, more simplicity on this impact. Because why is this standardized? Why is the impact standardized? Because of the frameworks. The frameworks are quite simple, and this does not cost a fortune. 100 points of risk are 100 points of risk in Costa Rica or Japan. It's universal. The same with economical return, financial return. This is a universal standard. These 100 basic points, nowadays, we don't know what they are. So to make this perfect equation, these standards on measurement, on reports, needs to be so standard and so foster at a financial level, but also for the risk. There are initiatives, DoD, but at the global level right now, Life for Rest Foundation, it's working to conciliate the financial report with the environmental report. And there are personal agendas, and I believe that as Latin Americans, we should be interested because of two main things. The frameworks should reflect the reality of our citizens and are very different from the information that we have on the north of the globe. And green and social should be understand both faces of a single coin. So for the environment, for instance, we're talking about theories of technological change that is quite simple to define. If you invest capital on a solar farm, this is technological, a solar panel, you will get kilowatts on a network. And all of this has price. It's a cost, an effect, and a demand. And this is the simplest way to do it. But now, what's the social value on a business model of this? For instance, for more jobs within the society, on a vulnerable community, on young women, on how can you include a company that is working on this kind of tech so young women that has not completed high school can be part of this at a formal level. This is fundamental for the life of women. So it's not as simple to define, but nowadays we have a challenge to go from this $1 trillion of impact to absorb this philosophy like ESG understood as a formal step in a way of projects that are not good or have screening parameters. This is 2.0 to go look for new possibilities of investment that you can measure that are transparent and with social impact. This is the challenge, to understand it as it is. And the impact now is as standard as the economical return and the risk. Now, trade-off, I believe that due to evidence, we need to take into account also the economical change. We have social disintegration in Latin America, and this is something that is evident. And this puts in checkmate the social tissue of our societies. And this is because of many factors that are the root case of this lack of equality that is not sustainable in a society. And we have lack of stability on our democracies, etc. One last thing that I would like to highlight, I hope that this is relevant for the forum and for the SMEs, is that investment on SMEs has to do quite a lot, at least in Latin America, with impact investment. First of all, because the economy on Latin America is of SMEs. So from the work being included in a society in these communities, and if we accept that this is a parameter for social progress of our families, of our households in Latin America, or the SICA region, invest consistently on these economical unities that concentrate more jobs, formal jobs and dignified jobs, it's the impact. And this is the challenge as Latin Americans, to accept this as something that is very ours. I've been, as an Argentinian, working for 7 years like this. I was working in London with Europeans and with North Americans, and for them the impact is something quite different. From us to create a job on a community that is vulnerable, it's impact. It may not be the case in Europe or in the US. We should not fear to have a definition for Latin America of this social impact. So mainstream is to invest in the SMEs. And two important things: investment as such, the impact investment, is not isolated. Something that we need to think of, well, are two characteristics, two things that we share in Latin America, in most of the countries. One, we don't have many formal jobs in our economies. Many are informal, more than 50%, I'll say. There's a lack of formality in the jobs in Latin America. So they are always outside the framework and the channels, and they have to pay the capital that is quite high. First. And second thing is that the climate for business are very poor, except for Chile and Colombia that have moved forward quite a lot. Peru and certain way, many other countries, Argentina, Brazil, are in 123 rank of 180. So it takes many days, many processes, many costs that you have to pay, bureaucracy, corruption, and this is the culture. There is no investment impact if we don't have the conditions, and bad conditions of the countries is one thing, but to improve the climate for the businesses in the countries is quite another thing. it's fundamental to play a part. And I believe that this is a challenge, Latin America, because of how it's built and the economical agents that are creating jobs. Because of the natural goods that we have, we pay the price of lack of equality. We are societies that every day we are excluded and we are not doing or playing our whole potential because of lack of equality. So our stability is on risk, and sustainability of our natural systems is also on risk. I believe that this is something that we understand quite well. And Daniela, I would like to salute our members. We work in 33 countries, I know, and they are part of a regional group in Central America. And this is an amazing job of disseminating the knowledge, publishing, mapping. And I believe that the actors on the region are very important so we can start working on these concrete solutions that our societies need. Thank you, Sebastian.
The impact investment to have a humanity that can continue to evolve. At this time, I would like to make a link. Precisely, Isabel spoke about two very concrete topics, one related to the high percentage of angel investment in impact businesses, and now Sebastian talked a bit about the implications and how it will transcend. But he also talked about a very important sector such as SMEs. I don't think that a better triangle couldn't be made than to give the floor to Ignacio. And I would like to ask you, Ignacio, how can we take advantage of technology to overcome the barriers and precisely even large inequality topics, and you're expert in microfinancing, and also maybe you can tell how you link the new financial strategies with e-commerce. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Isabel. And Sebastian, it's an honor to listen to you and learn from you. It's going to be a difficult for me because I bring some data, and mainly those who have quantitative information. When you have a series and a shock, the data is seen without a doubt. We are going through one of the most important moment in history, in modern history. And even though it seems that we are looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, we still are missing quite some time to be able to get out of this and see mainly what are the true implications. That's not going to allow us to look back too much to project this scenario, but it obliges us again to go to the terrain, seek for data, and obliges us to generate more dynamic evidence. And I referred to COVID impact, and I'm going to talk about that. And would have been hearing the title of this panel is more intelligent to talk about alternative finances, the new investment alternatives. And it's worthwhile to talk about alternative financing, a name that I like a lot because not too long ago, I was talking about other types of finances, informal finances, and sometimes as solidary finances. All these alternative finances is very linked to what is proposed as inclusive in social terms, and of course in terms of solidary terms and a triple impact area. So what Sebastian was talking about, I love this topic, and I could go to the furthest point. And I'm going to start by talking on the what is COVID going to leave behind and some of the challenges that opens the door to concrete recommendations for our regions with its characteristics in our region. And I couldn't be more in agreement with Sebastian. And normally the financial alternatives has a more broader, and one sees this in other regions. This is a scenario, you know about it, the scenario where the SMEs, the low-income economies or emerging economies do not have access to any type of financial services, no type of financial services, only financing. And when they access it in a completely unequal way, be it through what they used to call informal finances, and they were called microfinances, or based on the traditional financial products, which are the most inefficient in economic terms. Most of the SMEs in Latin America gets financed through a credit card. This is the most expensive product of the financial proposals, and they know about it and they have talked about it. In SICA, the question is, what track do they leave behind? And what it leaves us in Latin America is that has accelerated the world. It's called financial inclusion. It brings the necessary products so that this inclusion can become financial inclusion. These are one of the early challenges and can make us think about ideas and think about post-COVID world, or even a world with COVID. To start, it's a region that is reaching an absolute penetration of smartphones or anything that's alternative in finances with a much more efficient face in terms of incentives to this promotion. And they know that the mobile is the alternative, whether it's banking or non-banking. Second turn, there is a bankerization without precedence, and it's what included in 2020, and data to be able to have a quantitative tool that serves to understand what is effectively this bankerization without precedence, and the bankerization, digital bankerization, digital banks. And these are the data that we have seen based on the emergency transfers from the governments in 3 economies in Latin America. They have done whatever they've been able to transmit information to how many households they had to open a bank account, and without having a previous record to these transfers. And I'm not talking that the floor COVID leaves us at 20% more, 20% more bankerized people and that live in Argentina. So maybe half a year has gone by. And of course, we also know the bankerization, whether it's SMEs, and it's not a synonym of financial inclusion. The COVID-19 has opened the door to these new financial instruments or mobile instruments. We know it like digital banking and financial with non-intermediation systems. And we're talking about that this 2020, some economies like Brazil have a 30% more of households and 30% more of entrepreneurs with the doors open to financial systems, only the door open. And use of facilities and promise, and we gave it directly to what are the new finances, digital banks and virtual. 33% of the if this remained to stay, however, we find that when we update the data, the payment instrument linked vis-a-vis with informality with a lot of different areas, and then the informality And it's very um, phased to do the sufficient condition to be able to have this format and this will to be able to receive this economic income. And this is the macro variable that is going to transmit if there's a new financial inclusion. We're talking again is that we like to compare economies and payments that are being made in cash in Latin America. The average is in 2021, we found that there were more than 30% of the population of Latin America has the door open to finances. And we can impact to see how this is impacting the SMEs. And I could be able to bring you studies that have been published, and I bring you uh, in the Central American development but during 2020. And I can give you two examples of reports. This doesn't mean that necessarily they start talking about which is what we have to move in one direction with a financial inclusion and financing to SMEs. And we have a very recent example. And this is why I had a very recent publication about the main marketplace that Latin America has. And in this sense, we're trying that without a doubt. They have proceeded to include the SMEs in a very strange way and over e-commerce since very little time. And I bring the most concrete present of the marketplace to so that you can see the amount of entrepreneurs that are outside of this marketplace that are making use of financial instrument, and on the other side also published about just not over a week ago this early impact in terms of digital externalities that are possessed by the SMEs. Even when a SME enters into financial system with the service or the product that is more linked to POS, the point of sale, and even whoever incorporates into this scenario through this instrument finds once again a nearly immediate transfer to financial services which are more sophisticated. And even it tells some entrepreneurs of SMEs at the same time they help to send emergency subsidies and to make the public sector more efficient. And I translated in this way externality, and this word is being used a lot. And this is in the policies, and this is an externality that could be this market player if it's promoted in the same sense. And what the interesting part about this, it's an impact to modification of variables, but impact just 1 month ago, they had work data from the same institution, but from my perspective, it's already so relevant, and they make the impact evaluation that those SMEs now included digitally through new financial instruments, quote unquote, that are alternative, that at the same time, as a product of incorporation, have access into financing, quote unquote, alternative. And these innovations, and we're going to talk about what they are later on, but they have allowed for them to access these financial instruments they haven't had access in the past. So in my perspective, then there's more impact evaluation in this sense, but it's not a trend, but based on this data, I don't know if it's okay, because everything that we're discussing in this forum is basically for that, whether it's for working capital or for angel investment financing or any type of financing, so that the SME can sell more, can grow more, and can hire more workers and be the motor of the economy in Latin America, and to create 8 out of 10 jobs to be benefited. I would like to close by talking about the investigation And this topic that brings us here, the expansion of the payment means for Latin America. And what I wanted to say or to bring to the table is that it's impossible, given the shock that the region has suffered with regards to COVID, that we can give certain responses looking backwards with the knowledge that we have. So it's absolutely necessary to, and I invite that other economies start to do it with double click on their areas. But first of all, to use what the academy has taught us and with concrete evidence of what we can do with methodology. And this is simply to apply mixed methods in the three actors, the main protagonists, the offers of financial service and the public sector talking together on how to better improve the financial tools for the SMEs. And to talk about this is once again to talk about the different relations that exist between these three areas. It's absolutely enormous and it's absolutely multi-cause, and it's very difficult to think that only develop one part is going to have greater impact than the commerce, particularly e-commerce for this me and what we were mentioning before. But through this analysis, what we do is we find 9 challenges that are across for all the economies of Latin America. Each one can open a chapter for research, and we propose 14 concrete recommendations showing through the matrix how they are related between themselves and to promote not only financial inclusion, uh, compete against cash, promote competence and imitation, competition and innovation, and give interoperability to the payment system. Expansion of the digital payment means establish clear rules of the game and promote innovation of the ecosystem, protect data and the privacy, and guarantee security aspects of security without committing the experience of the user, and coordinate a regional system the digital payment means. So we also have 14 recommendations for this and all these challenges, but without a doubt, it's an agenda that we need to debate. It's an open agenda for the governments. It's not only the SICA region, but throughout Latin America as well, that without a doubt, they consider the points that Sebastian mentioned, and B, take advantage of this wave of and business angels or angel investors. And so they're making a new sector of the economy, generating innovation of real service, helping to include in this in terms of uh, uh, coordination to the economies of a region among so many other positive externalities in Latin America in each one of these players. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I'm anxious to listen to the debate to continue talking and learning together. Thank you so much, Ignacio. I think that you present a very interesting point, and definitely it's extremely relevant for the Sika region. Unfortunately, time is over and it flew by. It was to be expected with this level, high level of panel members. And the final reflection that I would like to share is that the inclusion or digital financial inclusion, angel investment, and impact investment are not only here to stay, but they're present to close gaps, important gaps in the region and all of Latin America. And I thank you so much for this passion, for this knowledge, and these experiences that I'm sure are going to strengthen the conversation in the region by a lot. And I have no other further ado than to give the microphone to Roxana. And thank you again, Isabel, Sebastián, Ignacio, for being here with us today. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, and for being a good, excellent excellent work that you have done at this panel. We have received a lot of information and with great richness. And thank you, Isabel, From Excala, we know that you're doing great work regarding promoting angel investors. So the zoom that you made of the Sika region brings us to be able to generate and advance on other public policies issues. And Sebastian, your focus was excellent. We thank you so much. And Ignacio, what to say about all the information that you provided. Thank you so much. And I have thank you so much. And to all the people who were here today on this panel and the questions that you have left, we shall try as possible to be able to respond them and publish them as well. Thank you again to each one of you. And please remember that in a few minutes, we shall have a dialogue work group about this particular topic where everything that was talked about here, and one of you have provided information, Isabel, Ignacio, and Daniel, are going to go more in depth into this work group and develop, which was there has been, and it was by invitation only about the ecosystem, and entrepreneurs and business people are also going to share the challenges and how we can overcome them. Thank you so much. Please be sure to listen on the 27th, our declaration that the board of directors of Sempromipa will be able to inform the region about the outcomes, and all these inputs that we have obtained and the ones that we're going to obtain today at the dialogue work group are very important to be able to present this SICA, high-level SICA forum. And so together, we shall make it possible. And thank you so much. Good afternoon. We'll see you soon.